Okay, students. So, initially we discussed about the diversity and functions of plant leaves. So, you all saw different functions and how they are adapted to carry out those functions. Now, we move on to the next part of the plant, that is the plant stems. So, diversity and functions of plant stems. I am sure you all are all familiar with trees and you know about stems, you have learnt about stems, the different types, how you can identify them, all that you know. So, now we are going to discuss a few more additional concepts related to all the diversity and adaptations of plant stems. So, first look at the pictures here. Now, in these two, what are these two types of stems? You can see the stem here. Now, here you can see this part of the stem and here also you can see that stem. Now, both the stems are visible to us. So, that means they are above the ground. So, normally the stems of a plant are above the ground. And in that also you can see how they differ and you all know. In some plants the stems are branched. Now, in the first plant, plants like mango and all those jack, all those the branches are there in the stems. But if you take the second plant, that is a coconut. Now, in a coconut tree or a puak tree, all these you have seen there is no branching. So, that is also something familiar to you. So, if we look at the basic functions of a stem. Now, in all these two trees or all the trees which either have branching or no branching, but you see the stem above the ground. The stem carries out basic functions. Now, these are the basic functions. First, if you look at the plant, you can see the leaves, the branches, the fruits, flowers, all those are present in the stem of the tree. So, that is the first function. Supporting and bearing leaves, buds, flowers, fruits, seeds of the plant. So, what is the function? Supporting and bearing. So, it supports the branches as well as it carries all the parts of the shoot system. That is leaves, buds, flowers, fruits and seeds. So, that is bearing those parts. That's the first function. So, if we look at the next function of the plant, you can see keeping the plant upright. So, not only supporting and bearing the different parts of the plant, the stem helps to keep the plant upright. That is why the leaves are on top. They don't fall down unless the leaf falls from the tree. Until it is attached to the tree, it's all up. So, flowers, fruits, everything is attached to the branches and the stem. So, that is all possible because the stem keeps the plant upright. That is another function. That is the second function, keeping the plant upright. Then the third one. Now, again here you can look at the picture. You can see, students, the roots are under the soil. And you know, when we water the plant, we water the soil. Although we pour it to the plant or whether we water it to the soil, still the water goes down. And you all are very familiar with that. The roots absorb water and minerals. But what is absorbed by the roots have to be transported throughout the plant. What does that transport process? That is done by the stem. So, another function of the stem is to transport water and minerals throughout the plant. So, three main functions. What are the three main functions? It provides a support and bearing leaves, buds, flowers, fruits, seeds of the plant. That is one. Then the second one, it helps in keeping the plant upright. That is upright manner. And the third one, transport water and minerals throughout the plant. So, three main functions of the plant. Now, this is possible for the stem that is above the ground. Now, look at this next picture. Can you see a stem there? We might think this part is the stem. That is not the stem. That is part of the leaf. So where is the stem? The stem is under the ground. Now here you can see this is a turmeric plant. Now this is now here below the soil. And here also it is below the soil. So this is an underground stem below the soil level. So here it is the soil here. So this is known as the underground stem. So that is another type of stem. Now you can see normally the stem has these functions. So if it is under the ground, it cannot carry out these functions. It cannot bear the leaves, fruits or the flowers. It cannot transport water to the rest of the plant. It cannot have the plant upright. So that means the underground stems have to have a special function or different functions. And that is why they are adapted as underground stems. So most stems are found above the ground. That is what we discussed there. All those are above the ground stems. Some stems grow underground and are known as underground stems. So that is what I have showed you all before. So far students, you all knew about the function of stems and you all knew about different types of stems. But most of those are above the ground stems. So now we are going to discuss the underground stems as well. So not only the underground stems, even the above the ground stems. Depending on the requirement, they can show different diversity as well as adaptations to do various other functions. That is what we are going to discuss now. So let's move on to the next slide where we look at the functions. Stems adapted to fulfill other functions. So note this, these are other functions. The main three functions, these are other functions. What are the functions? Propagative stem. What is the meaning of propagating? Producing new plants. Producing new plants. We have already discussed propagative leaves. Can you remember that? Leaves that produce new plants. Like that, there are stems that produce new plants. You have seen when people cut the part of a stem and replant it, it grows into a new plant. So that is propagation by stems. So propagative stems. Stems that store food, another function, storing food. Then underground stems, we have looked at underground stems. So they are a special type. They have different functions. We will discuss that. Then there are photosynthetic stems. So what is the part that normally does photosynthesis? It is the leaf. Leaves are the parts that are specialized to do photosynthesis. But there are some stems that can carry out photosynthesis. Then climbing stems. So all this while we discussed, the stem helps the plant to be upright. But there are plants with stems which are thin. So these thin stem plants, they tend to climb over another substrate. So that is where we discuss climbing stems. So we will discuss examples for all these different types of stems. So with that, I will move on to the first type. So the first one is propagative stems. So we'll see what these are. Most stems produce new living tissues. So note this point. New living tissues allowing plants to grow and reproduce. So normally we have the stems, they have certain functions, but there are stems that can produce new living tissues that can become another plant. So such stems are known as propagative stems. These stems are known as propagative stems. So their special adaptation is that they can produce new living tissues. That is something you have to remember, students. Then look at the two pictures here. Now this is actually a strawberry plant that is similar to a gotu-kola plant. And here you can see onions. So now what is the difference here? These red colored structures are the stems. Now these stems are above the soil. above the soil or the ground. Now, can you see stems here? No. So, what are they? They are underground stems. Underground stems. So, here if you see, now this is the main plant, and from here the stem grows over the ground, and again it has produced another plant here, another small plant here, like that throughout the area. It grows in all directions above the ground. That is the main thing, and produces new plants here and there. So, that is a propagative stem, but it is above the ground. Because of this, we give a special name. It's running along the ground. So, that's easy to remember. These are known as runners or stolons. Like this, there are suckers also. Those are also above the ground. So, there are stems that are above the ground that can carry out propagation or propagative stems. So, over the ground stems, it can be either runners or stolon, that is what is shown here, or it can be suckers. So, two types, runners or stolons or suckers, that is both over the ground. Then again we have this underground stem. You can see the plant growing from the underground stems. So, those are underground stems that can produce new plants. Those are also propagative stems. But there are different types. We will be discussing some of those. So, now can you all understand the difference, students? Now, this is a special function. Propagation, producing new plants. But to do that, there are different types of stems that are adapted in different ways. If they are over the ground or above the ground, we can call them runners or stolons, that is this, or another type, the suckers. And there are underground stems that can carry out reproduction. So now we will discuss them in a little bit more detail. So the first one, some plants reproduce by runners or stolon. The names, you have to remember all these terms and the examples. So what did I say runners are? They run, they grow over the ground. So it's like they are running over the ground. They are spreading throughout the ground surface. You can see that here. Now this is a gotukola plant. It's also called vallare in Tamil. So here you can see centella is the scientific name. You can see the plant. Now here it is rooted very much. That is the main plant. Here you can see towards this side. The stem runs along the ground. So a runner or a stolon. And it has produced another plant there. The same way it runs towards this side. Another plant here. Another plant here. So above the ground, over the ground, along the surface, you can see different plants coming up. So that is one example. Gotukola. The same thing for Undupiyaliya or Sirupulladi. That is another example here. Here also you can see there is a plant here, then it runs along the ground, another plant rooted. So like that, when you look at the picture carefully, you can see there are plants coming from various parts of the various places from the over the ground stem. That is called the runner or the stolon. Another example, Ambul ambiliya, that is the Sinhala name, and Puliyare is the Tamil name. Here also you can see the flowers are yellow in color, and over the ground, if you look at the picture closely, you can see the overground stem is rooted at different points. So that means from each point there is a new plant growing. So that is propagation by stolon or runners. Is that clear to you all, students? Okay then, I will move on to the next one. Plant species reproduce by suckers. Now this is the second type of over the ground stem. Suckers. What are suckers? Now look at this banana plant. Now this is the mother plant that is already there. Near the mother plant you can see a few young plants growing. How is that possible? That is by a part of the stem that is called the sucker. Now look at this picture. Here you can see this is the stem of the mother plant. Now from here there is a new banana plant growing. Now can you see the connection between this and this? This is the stem from the stem. So that part is what we call as the sucker. Is it clear to you all now? So from the stem that is above the ground, there is a part that grows as the sucker and that grows into a new plant. So again propagation by stem. Here also you can see from this stem suckers coming out and forming the new plant. Another example, Kalanduru or Palaragu. Again these are all the native names. Sinhala name is Kalanduru and Palaragu is the Tamil name. So here you can see even these are the suckers that reproduce. So stems that are propagative. Again the same thing is visible in paddy. Now this is how the paddy plant grows. Now here look at this part. Now when you take a paddy plant, when you pull it out from the soil, it looks as if all the stems are connected together. Why is that? Because from one plant, from the sucker, the new plants are produced. So this is how it happens. From one stem, the suckers form the new plants. That is very much visible here. So that is also an example for a plant that is propagated by suckers. So sucker is a special type of stem. That is what you have to remember. And the examples are banana, Kalanduru or Palaragu and paddy. Is that clear, students? Okay, then we will move on to the next type of stem. So here some plants with storage stems. Normally there is food storage in plant. That is why we consume many food items, vegetables, fruits, all those yams, rice, everything, cereals from plants because they have stored food. Now we are looking at stems that store food because normally you know it's the fruits or the seeds that contain food. But here the stem. Now if you look at this picture, you know what this is. Sugarcane. I am sure all of you all have eaten sugarcane. You cut a piece of the stem and you peel out the skin, and when you bite it, you get that nice sweet taste. That nice sweet taste is because the sugarcane stem contains food. So because of that, this is a storage stem. So one example is sugarcane. Now this part of the stem, that is the type of stem present in sugarcane, and that stores food. So you are familiar with that. From the sugarcane juice only we produce sugar. That is because there is food, sugar. Same way, kitul. Now you know the use of kitul. We get the kitul penny, and from that also they make the kitul jaggery. How is all that possible? Again because the stem. Now this part is the stem. The stem stores food. So this is a special type of stem in sugarcane and kitul that stores food. So we call them as storage stems. Is that okay? Okay then. I will move on to the next type. So some plants reproduce by underground stems. Now students, we discussed plants that are reproduced by over the ground stems. Now it is the underground stems. So reproduce by underground stems. And when I told you about underground stems, I said there are different functions and there are different types of underground stems. So some underground stems serve the functions of storage of food, pollination and asexual propagation. So you all know why plants store food. They store it for their uses, and that is useful to us because we eat those storage parts. So if it is the stem that stores food, for example potato, we can eat that potato as food. So that is one function of the underground stem, storage of food. Then what is perennation? Now in a normal environment, a natural environment, normally the conditions are suitable for plant growth. They get enough water, they get enough sunlight, all the minerals, everything is there for them. So the plant grows well. But there are times when there can be floods, too much of water, or there is no water at all, drought. Then these are extreme environment conditions. But the plant has to survive. So that ability is known as perennation. Ability to survive from one cycle of the plant until they reproduce the new plants, that is full life cycle. Until then, the ability of the plants to survive extreme conditions is known as perennation. And also asexual propagation. So these underground stems can produce new plants, that is asexual propagation. So do you all understand all these terms? Storage of food, perennation and asexual propagation. So when I said perennation, now all these functions are interconnected in some way or the other. Now let's say if we take a plant, let's say the first example, turmeric plant. Now the turmeric plant, you can see this part is above the ground and this part, the stem, that is the underground stem, that is below the ground and it stores food. So it is an underground stem, it has food storage. That is why we use turmeric, ginger, all these are used for cooking purposes. So that means they store food. And they are useful in perennation. So let's say there is lot of floods or some change in the environment, the plant can't grow. Then what happens is all these parts, now there are parts above the ground with the leaves. Now all these will be destroyed or they will be lost from the plant, but only the underground stem. Only the underground stem. Now this may be the ginger or the turmeric, this underground stem will remain there. So all the parts which are above the soil, they are destroyed. Only the underground stem is inside the soil. So it's protected kind of. So that is perennation. And when the condition becomes suitable for growth, they produce new plants. So here they produce a new plant. So that does all three functions. So now can you all understand? There is only one underground stem for a certain plant that stores food, and whenever it's needed, the parts that are above the soil are destroyed and the underground stem with the food storage, it survives there. And when the condition is normal, using that stored food, it grows into a new plant. That is propagation. So the same thing does three functions and these three functions are interconnected. So now if we look at the functions, some underground stems serve the functions of storage of food, perennation and asexual propagation. During the adverse season, now I told you all these adverse seasons, the aerial parts, now these are the aerial parts, get destroyed but the underground stem survives. That is what I explained to you all. During favorable season, so initially it was the adverse season, now it is the favorable season, new sprouts, you know the meaning of sprouts, the new plant that is growing from the underground stem. So new sprouts come out from the underground stem using stored food. So now is this clear to you all? Let's look at the examples. Already I explained this turmeric. So this is the aerial part, the leaves and all that is the aerial part. Here you can see the underground stem, and also you can see the roots as well. Because the plant has to root itself, it has to absorb water and minerals. So roots are there, then the underground stems are there, that is turmeric. The same thing for ginger. Now you can see above this part is above the ground. Below is the underground stem. That is nicely swollen so that you can see it has food storage. That is why we are able to use ginger for cooking. Then look at onion. Now here also the green color part is above the ground. Now these are the scale leaves. What we use as onions for cooking, those are the scale leaves, again a type of leaves. This part, now if this is the onion, you have seen this small part with the roots there, that is the underground stem. So this is what is the underground stem. Here you can see. So that is below the ground, stores food, survives the adverse conditions and produces new plants. That is very much visible here. Now you can see these are the sprouts, what we call as the sprouts. So now this potato, the aerial parts have been lost, they are destroyed. The potato remains under the soil for perennation, and when the condition is normal, it uses the food storage in the potato and you can see the sprouts coming up. Sometimes you would have seen this at home also. You buy potatoes, due to some reason you don't use it for cooking. You have it for few days or few weeks actually. Then you can see the sprouts growing from the potato. So that is again perennation as well as asexual propagation. Why do we call it asexual propagation? If it was sexual propagation, it should involve the flowers. Here it doesn't involve flowers. That is why it's known as asexual propagation. Does not involve flowers. So plants can reproduce by sexual reproduction, that is using flowers, forming fruits, seeds, all that. Otherwise, asexual propagation from other parts other than the flowers. So here it is the stem that propagates and here it is the underground stem. So did you all understand all these concepts? I am sure you did. So with that, I will move on to the next one, some photosynthetic stems. Now we have discussed this before also. When we discuss leaves, you can remember I told you all about transpiration. What is transpiration? Evaporation of water from the plants. And we saw that is useful for the plant, how it helps to absorb and transport water to the upper parts of the plant. But at the same time, if the plant is growing in an arid environment, that is an arid environment, an environment where there is less water and more strong sunlight or heat. So the environment is dry. So what happens is there is excessive amount of water lost from the plant, excessive transpiration. So what does the plant do? It has adaptations to reduce transpiration. In that, if you can remember students, we discussed having a thick waxy cuticle. Then we said they have thin leaves and also reduced number of leaves. Is that all? No. Another adaptation, the leaves becoming spines. So in these plants, you can see now you look at this cactus. What are these? These are the spines. And these spines are leaves. So the leaves are reduced to spines. The same here, you can see here also, when the leaves become spines, what is the main function of the leaf? They are there to do photosynthesis. Now they have become the spine. Can they do the photosynthesis? No. Then but the plant has to produce its own food. It has to do photosynthesis. It has to be autotrophic. So what happens? The stem becomes fleshy, it becomes green in color, that means it has chlorophyll and it does photosynthesis. So some stems are green and photosynthetic. Such stems are called photosynthetic stems. The reason is the leaves have become spines. Why? Because they need to reduce transpiration. So the stem takes up the function of photosynthesis. So one example is cactus. Another example, even this you would have seen. Daluk, that is the Sinhala name, or Sadurakalli, it is the Tamil name. So here also you can nicely see. Now there are small spines here, very fleshy stems, very thick stems, and they are very shiny because of a thick cuticle, and they store water as well as they are green in color. So what do? They produce food, they do photosynthesis. So these two are photosynthetic stems. So the next adaptation, photosynthetic stems. These are seen in plants that grow in arid environments. You know what arid environment or arid environment conditions are? Dry, less water conditions. Is that okay, students? Right. Then I will move on to the next one. Some plants with climbing stems. Next one. You know what climbing is? We normally climb the stairs. So that means we are going to a higher level, higher elevation. So why do plants need to climb? We have discussed that before. They arrange the leaves in a certain order, the leaf arrangement, so that they can get a lot of sunlight. So always plants try to absorb more sunlight. In order to do that, they have different adaptations. So one such adaptation is the climbing stems. Now there are many plants that have a very strong stem. So they can be upright. Then the leaves are all exposed to sunlight, no problem. If the stem of the plant, now here you can see in the beans plant or the Venivel plant, you can see the stems are very thin. So they can't keep the plant upright. So what they do is they grow around the substrate or another tree or on the surface of the wall. So those types of stems are known as climbing stems. Some plants fix to a support. So it has to be a support or a substrate to climb up and absorb sunlight efficiently. So the reason is to absorb sunlight efficiently. That is why they do that. So here you can see the sticks there, and around those sticks the climbing stem grows. So that is the climbing stem. Examples, Venivel or Maramanjal, that is this one, and beans. This is also beans. Now this I put to show you all how these climbing stems grow around a support. I am sure you have seen this, but just to recall your memory. When you look at the picture, it's easy for you all to remember these examples. So the climbing stems. Now can you all understand? There are different type of stems, they do different functions, and to do these different functions, they have different adaptations. So here, now if they want to grow around a support, how do they stay? If you just wrap the stem, a thin stem around a support, can it stay? Some stems, yes, they can. But there are some stems which have special structures. For example, tendrils, you might have seen in some plants, there is a structure like this, the tendril. Now the tendril helps to hold on to the support. Then later we will discuss the climbing roots. There are roots at different places of this climbing stem so that it helps to hold on to the support. So like that, these climbing stems can climb on their own. That means without a special structure, or they can have a special structure to hold on to the support. Is that clear now? So now we will go to the lab and observe some plant stems. Stem are part of the shoot system, and you all know the function. They bear the branches, leaves, fruits, flowers, all the other parts. In addition to that, they do different functions, and for those they are adapted in different ways. So to discuss that, I have some plants here. Now here we can see the first one. I will take the Gotukola or Vallare in Tamil, the Centella asiatica plant. Here you can see they have very thin stems, and these stems grow parallel to the surface of the ground. So this has a stem that is called the runner. So this is an example for runners, and they reproduce from these runners. So that is one type of plant stem. Then we have the grass plant similar to paddy and all those. They reproduce by suckers. So here you can see these are the suckers. So a grass plant, they reproduce by suckers. So that is also a different type of stem. Then I have the sugarcane plant. You know what sugarcane is. Sugar is made from sugarcane syrup. So this plant, the stem stores food. So here the function, an additional function of the stem is to store food. Then I have a turmeric plant. Now this has an underground stem. Normally the plant stem is over the ground. Here it is below the ground. So it's called an underground stem. Now this stores food as well as it involves in reproduction. The same, even ginger has an underground stem that reproduces. Leeks, there is an underground stem that reproduces. And even onions, this is the stem that is also an underground stem that also reproduces. And they do store food as well. So there are different underground stems which store food as well as they do reproduction. Then here I have a cactus plant. You have seen this before as well. They store water, and because the leaves are spines here, that is to reduce transpiration, these stems do photosynthesis. So we call them the photosynthetic stem. So adapted for photosynthesis. Then you all know, students, some stems like the sugarcane and all the trees, the stems are very, very strong. So they can grow erect and they don't need a support. But there are plants where the stem is very thin and they grow around a certain surface or a substrate. So those stems are called as climbers. As an example for climbers, I have the beetle plant. So here you can see the thin stems and they grow around another surface. And here again I have the manioc plant. That is a plant where the stem reproduces. This is an aerial stem that undergoes reproduction. So from all these, you all know I told you all about stems and then I said underground stems. So that means normally the stems are above the soil. We call them the aerial stem, and if it is below the soil, we call them the underground stems. And they have different functions, and for those functions, they do have different adaptations. So I am sure you were able to observe some of those adaptations here. Assignment given in your textbook. Complete table using examples for each type of stems which have adapted to carry out the functions given below. So far we discussed different functions. What are those functions? First we looked at the over the ground stems, the runners or the stolones, that are propagative stems. Another type, the suckers. So runners or stolones or suckers are all propagative stems. Then we looked at the food storage stem, aerial stem, that is stores food. That is the food storage stem, and also aerial stem above the ground. Then we looked at the underground stems with their different properties. They store food, they are useful for pollination, and also they carry out asexual reproduction. And finally, we discussed the photosynthetic stems and the climbing stems. So you know what they are. Now what do we need to do? We need to fill in this table. Complete table using examples for each type of stems which have adapted to carry out the functions given below. So propagative stems. Now when they say propagative stems, now here they haven't said whether it's above the ground or underground. So you can write all those. So what I will do is I will write one, go to color, that is above the ground. Another example, I will write potato, that is underground. So both of them are propagative stems. You can write many more examples. What are the other examples? You can remember, like go to color, we have the different types that have runners or stolons. Then like potato, there is ginger, there is turmeric. All those are examples of underground stems. So all those can be written here under propagative stems. Then we have aerial stems with food storage. That also you all know. What are the examples? Sugarcane, kitul. Then what is the next type? We have underground stems. Again, underground stems, we discuss many stems. I have written potato here for propagation. So here I will write turmeric and ginger. You can also write onion, potato. Potato can be repeated here as well. Then we have the photosynthetic stem. What are those? Cactus and daluk. So these are examples that you have already studied. But these are not the only examples. We have studied more. So you have to remember those as well. So in this assignment, we have filled the table for propagative stems. We have given the examples Gotukola and potato, aerial stems with food storage, sugarcane and kitul, underground stems, turmeric and ginger, and photosynthetic stems, cactus and tallow. So with that, can you all understand the different functions, the diversity and the adaptations as well as the functions of different types of stems? So I have completed the discussion on the diversity and functions of stems. So then we will have to discuss the diversity and functions of roots.